let's stay with this particular story. It should not be illegal for children to use cannabis. That's the call from the Centre for Child Law. It's asking the South Gauteng High Court to decriminalise the use of marijuana by children. Let's get more detail on this story now. And the Centre's attorney, Lita Stwai, joins us from our Pretoria studios. Ms. Stwai, thank you very much for your time. At face value, one will say you're condoning the use of dagga by minors, but I suspect you're going to say it's not as simple as that.
Yes, we're not saying that the smoking of marijuana by minors should be decriminalized. That's not what we're saying. And this case is an automatic review of criminal proceedings that were brought against children in the Child Justice Court. And we were actually asked by the High Court to come in as amicus, which is friend of the court, to actually display what the law says with regard to how you deal with children in the criminal justice system. So what we came across with this specific case is that these are children who are going to a school for children with learning disabilities, so they are a vulnerable group. And what has happened is that the school found these children high from cannabis, and what happened is that the school called the police to actually come and do the urine test. Firstly, that's not correct. If the school is allowed to, by the South African Schools Act, to actually test children, and if the children fail, that should be then used for disciplinary purposes for the school and not for criminal proceedings. So there's a big problem with how the evidence was acquired. But now the second problem with this is that this is a Schedule 1 offense, and a Schedule 1 offense requires a Level 1 diversion. So diversion is basically trying to keep the children out of the criminal justice system. And either it will be the children must attend classes at a specific place, and after they finalize those classes, then they can go free. But what happened here, and what the biggest problem is what happened after the Prince case, is that it decriminalized cannabis use for adults. And what the Child Justice Act says, it says that children should not be treated more severely for an action that if it was done by an adult, it would not be so. So at the moment, cannabis use by adults is not illegal, but children are now being treated more harshly because with the Level 1 diversion, they've been diverted, but then if they default, they're now being placed in Level 2 diversion and Level 3 diversion, which is for more serious crimes. So now you're having children who were high at school and found to be high at school being placed with children who are serving diversion for more serious crimes like culpable homicide and sexual assault.
Ms. Stwai, can I just ask this follow-up question then? Someone out there is saying, should children be smoking in the first place, particularly at school, but also importantly, since the ruling of the Constitutional Court last year, are you saying that government has not developed any regulations or laws around the use of dagga?
So with regard to children, we have a gap because the Child Justice Act stems from the Constitution, and it came into effect in 2008. So with that, one of the guiding principles is that children should not be treated more harshly as adults. But we believe that to get them through the criminal justice system is disproportionate and inappropriate, because should a child be found drunk at school, then the Substance Abuse Act comes into play, and the children, you have to also check what the circumstances are, what is the reason why the children are doing this, and you can actually take them to rehab. So at the moment we have a gap in how to deal with children.
And then, of course, the second question linked to that was whether government has since developed any regulations or laws since that all-important Constitutional Court ruling from last year.
With regard to children, there is no regulation on how to deal with children. We know that the Department of Education has come with regard to bullying. They have regulations that they are trying to put through. So with all these other different problems, social ills that we have, there are regulations, but it seems that with this specific one, there is nothing. And we think it's disproportionate to actually get the children through the criminal justice system.
From what you have observed, are there lots of children using dagga, smoking dagga at school?
So with regard to this specific case, the case now has been postponed. So we're still about to go back to court, and there should be an audit of how many children have actually been put through this drug child program. So at the moment, we don't know.
What about the diversion programs? Just as a final point, the diversion programs that you also raise as being an issue in how they handle these children who come through their doors. What are their obligations?
So with diversion programs, if the child has to go to a residential, which is what happened to these children, that they were placed in a temporary residential diversion, it's not correct to do so. So with their level 1, it's supposed to be some type of class where they still remain at home and they still are able to go to school. And if they default in that, then a probation officer has to make a report stating why. The child has to also be brought in front of the magistrate to actually explain. And the magistrate must actually ask the child, did you default? See what the probation officer said, and then actually check, was it the child's fault that they defaulted in the first type of diversion? And then if the magistrate deems fit that the child actually needs to go to a more stringent diversion, then the magistrate makes that choice, but not the prosecutor.
All right. Thank you very much for your insights there. That's Lita Stwai, and she is, of course, with that Institute of Child Center.